Hi, this is Lester Langdon. You are at our website, stoprealestatesnakes.com, and we are going to talk about real estate nightmares. And we're not going to try to sell any real estate here. We're not going to mention any names or addresses. You're feel free to drop in and tell us about, well, just first of all, you can drop in and you can listen if you prefer. And if you'd like to drop in and say something, you can do it with or without your camera on. And if you want to leave a comment in the comment section, please feel free to, and we'll try to respond to your comments. So the basic premise here is that I've been doing this 30 years. Oh, by the way, my name's Lester Langdon, and I'm a real estate broker. I'm also licensed by the state of Texas as a senior property tax consultant. I've been doing this 30 years. And I've seen lots of colors of snakes, and I know where they hide. But every day I think I've seen every snake. But sure enough, every day there's a snake that I've never seen before. Because the world's just really changing. You know, when we say stop real estate snakes, what do we really mean? Well, the world's gotten more complicated. The contracts to buy a single family home or a fourplex have gone from like 5 pages to like anywhere from 12 to 23 pages. Commercial contracts have gone like from 8 pages to maybe 25 pages in the last 30 years. I'm supposed to know and understand 100 different forms. Oh, excuse me. And so I'm supposed to understand about 150 different forms from the Texas Real Estate Commission, the Texas Association of Realtors, the Houston Association of Realtors, the National Association of Realtors. And I have to explain those to you. And of course, when we talk about snakes, we're talking about the fact that the institutions such as lenders and taxing jurisdictions and lenders and title companies, you know, they change personnel, and sometimes they've had an experience that they don't want to go through again. That may have had a lawyer involved, and they say, oh, let's not let that happen again. And so they'll add an addendum or a form or a disclosure or an affidavit, and they'll add that to the stack of papers. So you know, pretty soon the stack of papers gets pretty thick whenever you're trying to do a transaction. I mean, even leases are 16 pages long to lease an apartment. And that's kind of out of control. So when we talk about how to stop real estate snakes, we're talking about how to stop real estate nightmares. And we try to do that in advance before we have a signed contract so that we don't have problems after the contract is signed. I am ready for snakes. I'll show you here. Hold on. Let's see here. See, I've got my boots on here, my snake guards, and so if a snake bites me, it's not going through there. So I am ready for snakes. And so I've also got some other really good snake boots in the other room, really good ones. So you just never can tell where the snakes are going to be. So I wanted to talk about some circumstances that some snakes may pop up. By the way, if in fact this is not meant to be advice. If you need to talk to your tax advisor or your attorney, please do. By the way, if you want to go to the comment section and make a comment, please do. So it's to the point now in Houston where more people live outside the city limits than people who live inside the city limits. And so there are lots and lots of properties outside the city limits who have their own water wells. My house is a good example of that. We've got 2 acres here at the Poodle Ranch. And of course, my wife is the queen of the Poodle Ranch. We have 10 poodles running around here, and they run in herds. So we've got a water well, and it's only about 8 years old, so that's good. But if you're going to buy a property with a water well, you might want to have it tested for biological problems. So you can go down to the city testing center down at 2250 Holcomb, pay $16. You can get their testing bottle and their instructions on how to take water to take from the faucets or from the well or both, and take it back down there. They'll test it for biological problems for $16, and they'll email you the results. But what happens if you have a water well, and you really ought to ask, well, how old is that casing? How old is that water well? Because if it's a concrete casing and it's 30 years old or 35 years old, it might be time for a new water well. That's going to cost you about $12,000. And if you need a new pump, who knows when those will go out. My pump was 4 years old, and it went out, and it cost me $3,500 to put a new water pump down there. So, this just heads up, warning, you got to be concerned about these things. If in fact you are concerned about, let's say you have inspections done by a licensed inspector, and or you even have a 30-year-old concrete casing in your water well, or you just find out there's some air conditioners went out in the house. Well, how do you don't just ask for a price reduction, because that's just going to reduce the amount of money you have to borrow. That's not going to give you money to do the repairs. So you can, if it's a 5 units or more apartment complex, that's not a regulated loan. You can kind of do what you want to do. You can ask for the seller to give you money to do repairs. But if it's a house or a fourplex or a threeplex, which is a single family home contract, government regulations on the lenders, there's no plate. They can't give you money to do repairs, but there is a way to do it. You can ask the seller to give you money in lieu of closing costs, and him reimbursed, whereby the seller reimburses the buyer for, I think it's depending on the type of loan, up to 6% of the value of the property. So on a $400,000 property, they might be able to give you $24,000 at closing from the seller to the buyer, for the buyer to do repairs. And that's one way to skin a snake, so to speak. And so there's all kinds of problems that you might run into, and you just don't know what color the snakes are going to be. Every time a person joins a large institution, like, let's say it's a title company, they've got lawyers all over title companies, and they're coming up with new forms and asking the buyers and sellers to sign these affidavits. Well, they even asked the broker, me, to sign a document a couple of years ago. I signed it. I can't remember the circumstances or the details of the content of that document. And so frequently, let's say I recently sold a fourplex again. Actually, I've sold 137. That's 137 multifamily properties. I'm sort of the king of small apartment buildings in the Houston area. I don't think anybody's done more than 137 transactions of small multifamily buildings. Whether it be a 30-plex or a fourplex, whatever. As a matter of fact, the phone call that I just hung up on was to buy a duplex, and for cash. And I think we'll sign that contract tonight or tomorrow. So the issue is that if it's a 5-plex or bigger in the promulgated contract from the state of Texas, there is already a paragraph that says that the box can be checked, whereby the seller agrees to give the lease deposits to the buyer at closing, and agrees to prorate any rents if the closing's in the middle of the month. But that's not true of a single family home or a duplex or a threeplex or a fourplexes. You've got to remember to write that in special, because if you forget and you sign this contract, you're kind of, if you're the buyer and you didn't ask for the lease deposits to be credited to the buyer at closing from the seller, you're kind of stuck. You're just going to have to be real nice and say, please, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, give me those lease deposits at closing. And by the way, please prorate the rents, even though we forgot to put it in the original contract. So I think next week we're going to talk about squatters. I know we've talked about squatters in the past, and I've kind of tempered my approach, so to speak. It was pretty overt and strong-handed, and I think I thought of two ways to maybe better handle that. If then that's one reason you might want to not try to sell a property that is residential that's vacant, because you may end up getting squatters, and they're hard to get out. Also might delay your closing by a couple of months, maybe even 3 months. So this is Lester Langdon. My website is houstonius.com. That's HoustonIUS.com. And of course, you came to us through StopRealEstateSnakes.com. I don't see anybody in our herd of spectators here that has any comments, and nobody wants to stand up and say anything. So we'll probably leave it to you until next week. This is Lester Langdon at StopRealEstateSnakes.com or Houstonius.com. That's HoustonIUS.com. And we hope to see you next week at 8 o'clock. Thanks a lot. Bye.